Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform where we talk with a variety of teachers, entrepreneurs, spiritualists, uplifters, givers, shakers, and serenaders. Everyone has a lesson to learn and a lesson to share. Let's use our life experiences to enrich someone's heart, mind, spirit, and soul. Through sharing our experiences, we can be a learning inspiration for one another. I'm your host, Chris Levens. Let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is Markus Watson. Markus Watson is the pastor of Mount Soledad Presbyterian Church, the author of Beyond Thingification, helping your church engage in God's mission, and the host of the Spiritual Life and Leadership Podcast, which is the official podcast for Fuller Theological Seminary's Church Leadership Institute. Let's give a warm welcome to Markus Watson.
Hey there.
Hello. Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for taking some time out to be a guest here on Glass Half Full. We're so happy to have you tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Can you tell everyone where you are in the world and what time it is?
Yes, I'm in San Diego, California, and it is 7:37 p.m. right now for me.
Yes. Good early evening.
Yeah.
San Diego, that's the beautiful California. That's the real, people in roller skates on the boardwalk look.
That's right. Well, that's true. It's true. Except right now, we've just had so much rain. It doesn't. So, we don't have seasons like some parts of the world, but we do have our kinds of seasons, and it still feels like winter for us this year. For some reason, the rain keeps coming, and it hasn't gotten above 65, and that for us, that's cold.
No, I'm over here like we'll take 65.
Yeah.
We'll take
but we love it. I love living here, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, we're gonna jump right on in. I like to ask all my guests this first question. I believe that our lives are in spiritual design. Can you share your life layout or blueprint with everyone? How you grew up, where, your family lifestyle?
Yeah. So I grew up in a few different places. I was born in Los Angeles, Pasadena area, and then lived there for the first 5 years of my life, and then moved to Germany for about 3 years. And my mom is German. That's part of the reason we moved there. And my dad was a pastor, so he did sort of he's American, but there was sort of a pastor exchange program. And so he went over and served in a German church for a few years while some German pastor came and served in the U.S. at some point, And anyway, so I grew up from ages 5 to 8 in Germany and became kind of a little German boy at the time. I went to kindergarten and first and second grade in Germany. Wow. And and so I have good memories. Like I was young enough to where I have the memories are a little bit vague, but also old enough that they're kind of clear. Like I can still look on a map and be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this part of town or that kind of, when I look at Google Maps, sometimes I'll do that. But anyway, after that, we came back to the US, back to LA, and lived there until about sixth grade. And then we moved to Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. And then I grew up there from age, sixth grade through college. So let me give you a little more blueprint here. So eventually we did come back to LA. My dad, who again, a pastor, we went to where he was called to serve, and then was called back to a church in Los Angeles. And I was finishing up college at that time. And so I kind of followed my family back out to Los Angeles. I always felt like a California kid, even when we lived in Pennsylvania. And so I was really excited to move to California. Yeah.
That's cute.
And part of the reason I was excited was because my dream had been to make it big in Hollywood. Okay. And I just wanted, when I was little, I wanted to be a movie star. Then I got a little bit older, high school, and I was like, no, I want to be a movie director. And so, studied, the school I went to wasn't a film school, but we had a communication degree. And so I studied video production, and that was good. And so I actually got like some jobs in Hollywood at the very bottom of the totem pole when we moved back. So this is like early 90s, right out of college, mid 90s. And it was great at first. And I thought, oh man, this is it. I'm going to, fulfill my calling to be a great movie director or whatever, something like that. And I got to work on some really fun stuff. I got to work on a Muppets music video that was super fun. I got to work on a TV show called, it was the 1994 Clio Awards. Clios are like the Oscars for commercials.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really cool. Kelsey Grammer was the host of that show, and we had a bunch of little celebrity presenters, and it's not quite as big as the Oscars, but it was a fun show to work on. And
nice.
Yeah, so little things like that, and I got to do that, but I developed sort of this love-hate relationship with Hollywood because I realized that they treat the people at the top like they are at the top, right? And they treat the people at the bottom like they're at the bottom. Now, you're not. I was at the bottom. I wasn't like totally mistreated, but it was like, here's a moment where it kind of became clear to me. Oh, this is how Hollywood operates. I was supposed to deliver a script. This is before email, or right as when people were still trying to figure out what in the world email is. So I was supposed to deliver a script to the host of this show that I was working on, and it was supposed to go to their house, like a condo in a gated community, and I took it to what I thought was the right house, but no one was answering the door, so I put it through the slot. There was a slot there. I put it in there, and then I got back to the production office. They're like, why didn't you deliver it? I was like, I did. And they said, you never delivered. I'm like, I did. And anyway, and so then figured out, oh, it was the wrong place. And the producer goes, you can't make mistakes like that. This guy is a star. And then he goes, well, he's not a star, but he is a celebrity. I was like, oh, I see how this works. Okay. So he isn't quite at the top, but he's up there, but he's still not quite at the top. I didn't realize there was a difference between star and celebrity, Anyway,
wow.
Eventually I was like, I don't think this is working for me. And, so I decided to quit Hollywood, and anyway, I can go into it, but I don't have to. I had some other options that I thought about trying, and the soonest, quickest, easiest thing for me to try was going to Fuller Theological Seminary, not because I wanted to be a pastor, but I thought because I didn't really know what else to do with my life. I was interested in studying ministry and theology, and I got there and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love this. I love learning this stuff. And I got a job in their media department doing video editing, which is exactly what I'd been wanting to do. I didn't get to do that in Hollywood, but I got to do it there. And I ended up being the video production coordinator at Fuller for the next several years.
Oh, snap. Wow. Look how that worked out. Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I'm in the right place. This is where I was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's kind of the blueprint for my story up until my mid-20s. And then from there, I did end up becoming a pastor. I wasn't sure at first if that's what I would do, but I did. And it was good. And then, well, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not. I had a very difficult experience at one of the churches that I was at, but it was also a very transformative experience for me. And
yes, we definitely. I will come back to it.
Okay.
But yes,
okay, good.
Keep taking us on our journey.
Yeah. Well, and so so we'll come back to that. But served as a pastor in a couple of different churches, and then had a difficult experience, which we'll get to. Then for a while, thought I wouldn't be a pastor anymore. I'll save this for later. Like it's part of that whole story, if that's what you want to talk about. But right now, I'm at Mount Soledad Presbyterian Church as their interim pastor, and it's great, and I love it. And
how long have you been there?
They're good people. 1 year, almost exactly 1 year.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good.
And do you have a family?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. I do. I'm married, and my wife and I got married while I was in seminary.
Nice.
I have 3 kids. My oldest turns 18 tomorrow.
Oh,
and,
snap. Happy early
yeah,
birthday.
I know. We
18.
spent some
Woo.
time. I
Job
know.
well
We spent some
done.
time reminiscing tonight at dinner, and so it was. Anyway, it's good. I'm very proud of him. And then that's my oldest. He's my son, and then my daughter is 15, and you know, I always feel like she's a little bit annoyed at me, but that's how
the 15 years, because this is 15. It's the hormones.
That's right.
We just had a niece. She's 17. So 15. Yeah, this is normal. This is normal. She's on the right path.
Yeah, that's right. And then my youngest boy is 10 years old, and
nice.
So I love them. They're all great. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Thank you for giving us that breakdown of that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, and this is coming back to this event that happened. I'm going to place it in this question. What has been the most difficult choice you've had to make to fulfill your destiny?
Oh, man. The most difficult choice. Okay. Well, can I just tell the story?
Sure, of course.
And the answer to that will come out
yes,
as I
please.
tell the story.
Take your time.
Yeah. So I had been at this church as their pastor for about 7.5 years.
Wow.
And it was good. It was a really great experience, great church, had good relationships, good connections with folks there. We were doing good ministry, I thought, and we were. And then I went on a sabbatical, and that about 2 weeks into the sabbatical, I got a call from the guy who was our executive presbyter. So he's kind of like the guy who oversees the San Diego, network of Presbyterian churches.
Oh, okay, he's a high up somebody.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, I knew him. We had a relationship, and he called me and he said that someone had accused me of having a problem with pornography. And I was like, oh. And he said, well, actually, at first he said, I just need to meet with you. And it wasn't going to work at first. Anyway, so eventually I met with him. When I met with him, that's when he said, someone has accused you of this. And, so full disclosure, it's not like I've never looked at pornography. But it's also really important for me not to, because I don't think it's particularly good or healthy. And so at that point in my life, I had already had an accountability partner. I don't know if that's something people are familiar with, but just someone who helps you, just not, to be strong in whatever way that you need to be strong. And so had some accountability software on my devices. And so anyway, so at this point, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. I said, what do you need to do? And he said, we need to do a forensic analysis on your laptop. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, right. And so I said, do you want my laptop now? He said, that'd be good. And so I gave it to him. And so they did this analysis, and, at first said it would take 2 or 3 days. And then it ended up taking, 2 or 3 weeks.
So this is the laptop from, sorry to interrupt you, but this is the laptop from the church that you're using while you're at church. Okay.
So it was like the laptop I used, but it was owned by the church.
Got it.
Yeah. And so that's why they could do that. Now, part of the problem with what was happening was that they weren't actually following the process. I'm Presbyterian, and we have a process for everything. And when someone makes an accusation, there is a process to be followed in order to protect the accuser and the accused, and to make sure that it's thoroughly investigated. And they were treating the person making the accusation, I had no idea who it was at the time, didn't want to make a formal allegation. And so they did, without doing that, there's no process to be started. So they decided, this guy and someone else decided, well, we need to do sort of an under the table investigation. And so it was like a secret investigation, which left me kind of exposed, right? I mean, just vulnerable is what I mean. I wasn't exposed in terms of people knowing about it, but I felt vulnerable. And about 2 or 3 weeks into this forensic analysis, he finally called and he said, and I was very frustrated at this point, because I was like, come on, I need some answers. I want my laptop back. If I'm on sabbatical, I want to use it, maybe do some writing, whatever,
Yeah, right.
And so he finally called me and he said, well, the analysis is complete, but I can't give you your laptop back because your laptop has been handed over to the authorities and it's now a potential criminal investigation.
Oh,
and I was like,
wow.
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I was so, frustrated at first, but then just so scared. I mean, after that conversation with him, and it led into a really dark period of my life, but a really dark 6 weeks or so where I had no idea what was going on. Who had my laptop? All I knew was the authorities. They weren't telling me anything, and I was just really scared. I didn't know what they found. I'm like, well, when the accusation is pornography and then it goes criminal investigation, I'm like, well, you think child pornography. And I'm like, but I mean, I've never, ever looked at that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm thinking, was there something else? I mean, I don't know, bomb making instructions or something,
something you might have just flipped over just to look at,
I don't know.
The mind starts
and
running.
One of the things, for sure. My mind started running. And, one of my fears was that our tech guy at our church didn't like me a whole lot at this point. And I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't great. And I thought part of my thinking was, did he put something on my laptop? It's not what happened, but that's where my mind went, So anyway, led to a very dark time. But there were also some gifts during this time, some moments and points of light. And one of those is that one of my friends, who's also a pastor and who's my accountability partner, he really went to bat for me during this time in ways that I couldn't go to bat for myself. He would write emails on my behalf, and he would have meetings on my behalf, and he would make phone calls on my behalf. And so he treated like he went to bat for me, but then he also really just expressed care for me. And he would text me or call me every couple of days. How you doing today? You hanging in there? He'd take me out for dinner or drinks or something. And one night I was driving home from having been out to dinner with him, and I was just thinking to myself, why is he doing this? Like, he doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to put all this energy and time into caring for me and going to bat for me, Mm-hmm. And then I sort of had this realization, I think I have this deep down feeling that I don't deserve to be cared for. And that was like a revelation, like my eyes were opened almost when I recognized that. And so the next day I went to the beach, and I used to surf more than I do now. I haven't done it in a long time, but I was out on my surfboard.
Nice.
I'm not very good.
Could you? I was about to say, could you stand up on it? You could get up.
Yeah, I can if I can catch the wave. But
all right, San Diego. Okay, yeah, nice.
Right. So anyway, I'm sitting out there. Actually, I don't think I caught any waves that day. I just sat on my board, and that's actually wonderful to just sort of sit out there on the water, let the waves bob up and down below you, underneath you, Mm-hmm. And I was sitting out there, and I was thinking about this sense that, I don't feel like I deserve to be cared for or loved. And so, and this sense that I feel like I've been telling myself I don't deserve to be loved by God, right? So that was one of the things. I realized, so as a Christian, one of the things I do is I ask God to forgive me for stuff. Mm-hmm. Lord, I'm sorry that I did this. And I realized that for 30 years, like since high school, I had been, whenever I asked God for forgiveness, I would say, Lord, please forgive me. I don't deserve your love. And it dawned on me.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, I've been telling myself for 30 years that I don't deserve God's love.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And
power
so
of words, right?
Absolutely. And so I just repeated to myself over and over, Lord, I deserve your love. Lord, I deserve your love. Not that I've earned it, but that I'm worthy of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm a child of God, a human being created in the image of God, and that makes me worthy. Just like my kids are worthy of my love, whether they do good stuff or not, right? Mm-hmm. I just love them. And so I had to unlearn that message that I'd been telling myself, that I don't deserve God's love. I do deserve God's love. I am worthy of God's love. And then I realized, I have this sense that I don't deserve just in general to be loved by people or to be cared for. And so I just started repeating to myself, I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be loved, And so that was one of those key moments that has shaped my my soul, myself, going forward. I am worthy of love, and I'm worthy of loving myself too,
Yes.
So anyway, so that was a big moment. There are two other kind of key moments I'll mention. One actually happened when I was with a lawyer. So my friend said, maybe you should get a lawyer. And I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. And so my wife and I we met with a lawyer, and I had told her, this particular moment of light isn't really like a spiritual moment, but it is kind of. But anyway, so what happened was we met with her, and I told her everything that was going on, and she was asking me a lot of questions, and she said, if you're guilty, I'm not going to represent you. And I'm like, oh, thinking
Oh,
child
snap.
pornography at this point. And I'm like,
So
yeah,
she
oh,
just
man.
instantly jumped to, because they just said pornography. They never said child,
They
right?
never said it, but I was worried about that might have been the thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
she said, if I think you're guilty, I'm not going to defend you. And then she was asking me all kinds of questions, and then she started painting this really bleak picture of like, well, and if they find something, then they're going to come bang on your door, at 4 a.m. and get you out of bed, and that's how they're going to arrest you. And I was like, man, that sucks,
Right.
And after about an hour, she said, well, I can tell that you're not guilty. And I was like, what? You can? How can you tell? And she said, well, you're not asking the right questions. I was like, what do you mean? She said, well, if you were guilty, you'd be asking questions like, what's our defense going to be? How much time am I looking at? And you're just asking about how you can get your laptop back. And I was like, oh, wow.
Mm.
I'm so glad somebody can see through this,
Mm-hmm.
So that was a gift, right? To know that, okay, here's someone who can see what's really going on, right? And then there was one other thing that happened during this time, and it was really the most powerful moment in this whole experience. I was on sabbatical, as I mentioned, at this time, and I was spending a lot of time just sort of in silence and a prayer, and reading some scriptures, and I was reading a lot of Psalms of Lament. I don't know if you or your listeners know what that means, but these Psalms that are kind of like crying out to God. They're not joyful, they're lamenting, right?
Mm.
And sometimes they'll say things like, "Oh Lord, destroy my enemies," And when you read that and you're not in a bad place, you're like, why would this be in the Bible? This doesn't sound very loving. But when you're in a place where you're being attacked by people, or you feel attacked, it's like, oh, I get this now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, these words are saying what I'm feeling, right?
Yes.
And so I was really resonating with these Psalms of like, Lord, where are you? God, why haven't you
Thou
come to my
forsaken
aid?
me? Yeah. Like.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I was spending some time in these, and then, it's like, and then, so after spending some time in one of these Psalms, I put my Bible down and I just started thinking and praying. And then my mind started going into all these worst case scenarios. And I thought to myself, man, if it looks like I'm guilty, I could lose my job. And I did eventually, actually. I'll get to that. If it looks like I'm guilty, I could lose my reputation. And that was like almost one of the worst things, because then all these people that I know would believe something about me that wasn't even true. Mm-hmm. Right. I thought, oh my gosh, if I lose my, if it looks like I'm guilty, I might lose my ordination, right? And can never serve as a pastor again, in our denomination anyway. If it looks like I'm guilty, and I was like, I could lose my family. I don't actually think I would have, but my mind was going into these worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. And then I thought I could become a registered sex offender if it looks like I'm guilty. And,
oh my gosh.
And everywhere I go, I would have to not only, like, people wouldn't just hear about this. I would actually have to announce it. Yeah. And everyone would believe this thing that wasn't true about me. And then I thought to myself, and if it looks like I'm guilty, there's a chance I could go to prison. And so it was just like, I couldn't fathom this, but I had this image in my mind of myself sitting all by myself in a prison cell, having lost everything, lost my job, lost my family, lost my house, lost my, just everything, and my reputation, and just being utterly alone. And then it was like I heard a voice. I didn't actually hear a voice, but it was like I sensed God saying to me, yes, Marcus, they might take everything from you, but the one thing they can't take is my love. And in that moment, it was like I understood God's love in a way that I had never understood it before. It just became more real and almost tangible to me in a way that it had never been before. I had always believed that God loved me, and I preached that, I taught that. Of course, yeah, God loves you unconditionally, but it's like I didn't really viscerally know it until that moment. And that was probably the most transformational moment of my life. Like when I think of my life, I almost think of it as before that and after that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it changed the way, I think about myself. My primary identity is not Marcus, the pastor. It's not Marcus, the dad or the husband or the whatever, it's Marcus, God's beloved, right? God's beloved child. And that's it. And it changed the way that I think about what I do as a pastor. I was so focused prior to this on trying to get my church to be big and impressive. And it wasn't. I mean, we were a small church. We were about probably 100 people or so. So nothing big or impressive, but I wanted to be. And I started, through this experience, I realized, oh man, there is so much of my ego in what I'm doing here. And this whole experience just sort of stripped my ego away from me. I've still got some ego, but it's not like I see it. I see it more now. I'm like,
you're aware of
it.
Like,
oh,
yes.
My ego's creeping in here, right? So yeah, it changed the way I think about ministry to where like my job now is not to try to get our church to be bigger. It's not to, impress people. It's not even to convince people to believe certain right things. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's what we do. We try to get them to believe the right things. That's not my job. My job is just to help people know that they are God's beloved. And I shouldn't say I don't care what they believe, but beliefs will take care of themselves, right? The most important thing to believe, I think, is that God loves me, and there's nothing that I can do to take, to cause God to stop loving me. And if I can convince somebody of that, right? That's what this is about. And usually it's not just words, right? That convince someone that they are loved. It's also the act of loving someone, caring for someone, showing compassion, working for justice, right? All of that matters. So anyway, I'll conclude now. The rest of my story goes a little faster.
No, it's fine. It's about you. You don't have to rush. It's about you. You take your time.
Okay. Well,
take us on that journey.
You got it. You got it. So this is about, this was probably about 8 or 9 weeks into my sabbatical. It was a 12-week sabbatical. And then we're getting close to the end. My lawyer contacted me and told me, hey, I figured out who's got your laptop. It's the FBI. And I'm like,
my gosh.
Yeah.
They know who you are.
I know. There's a file on me somewhere.
Oh my gosh, Marcus.
I still can't believe it. It's crazy. But about a week before, let's at first, actually, I met up with our executive presbyter, about 2 or 3 weeks before I went back to work. And I said, hey, can I at least, I'd emailed him, can I at least get some of my work documents back? I don't have my laptop back, but can I get some of my work documents back so I can, work when I get home? I can borrow a laptop at least. He said, sure, let me see what I can do. So he got some of my work documents, and I met up with him to get it on a flash drive. And he said, hey, just want to let you know off the record, they told me they haven't really found anything. And it's interesting when I think back, because I didn't respond by saying, oh, good, thank goodness. It wasn't like a relief. It was just like, okay. And I reflected on it later. I'm like, why didn't I respond like with relief? Well, because of course they didn't find anything, right? I knew they weren't going to find anything. And I was grateful to know that, nonetheless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, then about literally a few days before I went back to work, this guy texted me and he said, "Hey, I have your laptop. You can come pick it up from me if you want." So I told my friend who was going to bat for me through all this. I said, "Hey, what do you think? I'm going to go get my laptop." He said, "Hey, why don't you check with your lawyer first, just to make sure, if there's any procedure there." Yeah, and so I did. I contacted her, and she said, "Actually, you shouldn't even be in contact with him. As far as we haven't gotten notice yet that this investigation is closed, and you should not be, in communication with this person." So she said, "You tell him that he can bring your laptop to my office, and then you can get the laptop from me." So
that makes sense.
I told him that, and I said, "Yeah," and so I said something like, "Hey, so and so." My lawyer said, blah, blah, blah. I can get, the investigation is still open. I use that word investigation. And so I'll get it from her office. You bring it to her. And so then he responded, and just 4 words in an email. And he said, "Marcus, what investigation?" And then signed his name. And I was like, what? I was so angry.
Oh my god!
Because it's like it's like he was trying to make it like it didn't exist. I couldn't understand what he meant by that. But it was just so dismissive of all of this pain and turmoil that I had gone through. So he had actually, interestingly, already announced his resignation from this position and was moving out of the state, and unrelated to this, I'm pretty sure. But so I only saw him one other time. I never actually interacted with him again, but I was just like, I can't anymore. Right. Okay, great. I'm glad this is done, but I can't with this guy. So, I didn't have to. And that was kind of a gift. Anyway, went back to work, mm-hmm. And then about 2 or 3 weeks in, so I did eventually get my laptop back, within a few weeks, of that. And then I got another notification from the presbytery saying that I have now been officially accused of something regarding child sexual misconduct or something. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, right? And basically what happened was this person who had made the initial allegation didn't like the outcome of this first unofficial investigation and said, well, now I'm going to make formal allegations. And so then, right, because there was no record of this first investigation, then there was now a formal investigation that got started. Yeah. And I just remember thinking that first day, I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, why is this happening? We already got through this. Now we have to go through it again. And it was interesting that first day, because by the end of the day, it's like, at first I was so anxious and worked up about this. But then by the end of the day, I realized, you know what? I got through this once, I can get through it again. Mm-hmm. And so I had more peace about it.
Good.
And interestingly, so I had to go before a panel. So this is part of the process. And so I actually am grateful for the process. And there's a lot of turmoil in some churches and denominations with misconduct and abuse. And it's because people aren't being held to account. One thing I am grateful is that, at least in our denomination, right, people can be held to account. And there's a process for, examining, if there is something going on, and it's done in such a way that someone from outside, someone,
a third party
objective can come in, a third party can come in and objectively determine, okay, there is or there isn't something happening here. So that's what happened. And I am really grateful for that. They actually had to decide up front if I needed to be put on administrative leave due to the nature of the allegations. And they didn't. One of the people was an attorney on this panel that made this decision. And he said, well, the allegations don't actually allege anything that the person knows anything specifically about. They just assume that because this other investigation took place and there, that the FBI investigated it, that there must be something there. But there actually is no evidence that there's anything. So that's a little, a lot of information there, but I was really grateful for that, right? Mm-hmm. That, okay, they recognize there are no personal, no one has any personal experience of any kind of misconduct. They're not even alleging that. So that was nice for me to know. Yeah. there was an investigation. Lots of people were interviewed. My wife was, my friend was, others perhaps. And then in the end, they decided that there wasn't enough evidence to support the allegations. And so that was sort of, so that investigation was closed.
Mm.
So that was great.
Yes, definitely great is closed, but to feel like, my gosh, to have you just running on this whole ordeal. Oh, no, it's not over yet? Go ahead. Oh, my gosh.
It's almost over.
No, what else has happened? My goodness.
It turns out that this person who was making these allegations was a staff person in the church. And
oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and the reason that the allegation was made was this. So this person told someone else, who then shared with me, right, that she said, oh, I was telling Pastor Markus about my husband's problem with pornography. And when I told him, he just didn't react the way I thought he would. He must have a problem with that too. Right.
Oh, my gosh.
Right. And so that's where it came from. And I was like, I cannot believe it. Right. I don't know how I responded. I don't know. But it wasn't whatever this person was expecting, And so
oh my gosh,
anyway, in the end, this staff person made the same allegations a third time, this time to the elders at our church. And
so this was a whole different person, different set of people.
No, it's the same person, but accusing me. So first the accusations went to the presbytery. Now the accusation is going to the church board.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we had a meeting about this, and I just sort of put it all out on the table. The new executive presbyter came and said, you know what, as far as the presbytery is concerned, this is a closed matter. My friend came and said, hey, I have years worth of accountability reports from Covenant Eyes, which is the accountability software. If you want to see them, I can send them to you, which is, in terms of accountability, in terms of internet use. So anyway,
that's what that means. Okay.
That's what that means. Yeah. And I had been keeping a detailed chronology of everything that happened. I read to them that chronology. So I just put everything out, and then I recused myself. Came back in about half an hour later, and they said, hey, Markus, we want you to know that you have our trust as our pastor. And I was like, what? Wow. Internally, I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe this. That's great. They said, we're not going to ask for your resignation, which someone had suggested. We're not going to, and what we are going to do, they said, is brace for a potential lawsuit from this person.
Oh my gosh.
And so in a way, I was like, wow, well, this is good. Maybe it's now over. And I think it could have been, except that one of the elders, for whatever reason, decided to believe the allegations. And she started calling people in the congregation and said, Pastor Markus is into child pornography. And at that point, we didn't know this right away, me and the other elders, until about 2 weeks later. But by the time we found out, it was like, oh, well, I think this is over. Because at that point, it's like, how do you come back from that? Yeah. And so anyway, a few weeks later, there was a congregational meeting, and there was a vote to dissolve the relationship with me. That's the language we use. And it passed by a margin of 2 votes. And so that was the end of my time.
Well, who wants to stay there after all that? You know what I mean?
You
know what I mean? Like, who wants to look up on these people's faces who have,
By
that's
time,
too much.
It felt like a release.
I'm sure you could just wash your hands of it all.
That's right. And you know what the wonderful thing is, a gift, another gift in all this was the very next day after I got voted out, I was on a plane to Little Rock, Arkansas for a pastor's retreat. And that had been on my calendar for 6 months already. And I was like, Lord, you knew I was going to need this week in particular. And what's amazing is when I got there, I was not the only person, the only pastor who had been voted out of their church on that same Sunday.
Whoa.
I know. We had some commiserating going on.
Oh my gosh. That's intense.
Yeah. Well, let me, so that's that part. That's that story. And then there's sort of the recovery part, but I'll stop there and see if you have any follow-up or.
Yeah, no. Thank you for that information. I wanted to know, how was your faith during all of this?
My faith, yeah.
Did it waver? Did you believe that you were going to that it was all going to be taken care of? How was your, and first, can you tell everybody, what is faith and how does it work?
Oh, yeah, good question. Oh gosh. Okay. What is faith and how does it work? Uh, well, let me stay with the personal, and maybe I can kind of express it through that. What is faith?
Okay.
Faith is trust. Faith is trust, right? Trust in God. For me, right? That's what it is. I trust that God is with me. I trust that He will never let go of me. That doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean everything's going to go the way I want it to. It didn't. But it's also a belief that I'm never alone, even when it feels like I'm alone. I'm never alone, and that's, in a way, that's the most important thing that I got out of this whole experience. So my faith actually deepened through this experience. I wouldn't say that I ever doubted God during this experience, but I did question God. I would say, why are you letting this happen? Like, what did I do? I didn't do anything to deserve this. Like, there are people who actually do this kind of stuff that I'm being accused of, and they're getting away with it. And here I am, and I'm being accused of this. And I might actually, something I didn't know, something could happen to me. Like, I might go to prison for all I know. That's the hardest part when I don't know if you ever heard of the language of the dark night of the soul, right? When you go through something really difficult and it feels like a dark night and your soul is going through this dark night. This was my dark night of the soul. But those dark nights, you can come through one of these dark nights and you can end up bitter and angry and resentful and cynical, right? Or you can come through and you can be more loving and more compassionate and more hopeful. And I'm grateful that I came through in that latter sense. I came through with a deeper faith, right? I came through recognizing even more that I am God's beloved. I came through knowing even more that God is never going to abandon me. It doesn't mean it'll always be easy. Sometimes it might be super hard. I don't know. There will be other painful times in my life, other painful chapters, I'm sure, right? We all have loss. As we get older, we lose loved ones, right? At a minimum, that will happen. But I'm not going to be alone in that, right? And then one of those really important things that kept me grounded and rooted in all of this was the fact that I had people who were supportive of me during that time. My family, my wife, my friend who was going to bat for me. And that meant so much to me, right? I think in a lot of ways, the way we experience God is when other people care for us, right? We human beings are the hands and feet of God in the world. And so I knew that God loved me because there were people that loved me. I knew that God cared about me because there are people who care about me. And so I came through this. That's why like now I'm just like, I just want to love people, I
love that.
I hesitate to say I don't care what they believe, but I do kind of not care I just want to love people. I want them to know that they are God's beloved, whatever you believe, right?
Nothing wrong with that, right?
I want you to believe that God is love, and sure, I want you to believe that Jesus, loves you. I'm a Christian, and so I go to Jesus, and I hope you find the same thing that I found when I go to Jesus, but I'm not going to stop loving you if you don't, right? Yeah. I just want you to know that you are loved.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's so thinking about what was your question? The first question, it was
to tell us about
decision. The very first question you asked that led
about
into
the blueprint.
Story. After that, sorry.
About the choice that you made to fulfill your destiny.
Yeah. So maybe the choice would be the choice to live my life, focus more on loving and caring for others than trying to achieve the things that I think, right, are going to give me approval in the world, or that are going to give me status or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't even care about status anymore. Not 100%. I still care a little bit about that, but just nothing like it
Nothing be
was
consumed
before.
by it and overtaking that is the forefront of it. That the ego is not going to be involved in what needs to be done for the work of the Lord,
That's right.
So
that's right.
Definitely.
It just changed me. And so it's one of those things where I hope I never go through that again. I really don't. I do not ever want to go through that again.
Look, Pastor Marcus, I hope so too.
Yeah.
I feel like this is it for you. It's time to move. Like
Yeah.
we on to a
That's
new
right.
lesson, Lord. We on to a new
Totally. That's right.
Yeah,
And here's
totally.
the thing. I would not go back and undo it if I could, right? As painful as it was, as hard as it was. And also, I know that there are people who suffer way more than I did, right? And some people who really do go to prison for things that they didn't actually do. Nonetheless, I don't want to downplay the fact that it really was painful.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's intense.
But I wouldn't undo it because it transformed me. So
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, how do you explain, now this is a big one, how do you explain the difference between religion and spirituality?
Mm-hmm.
From your view?
Well, yeah. So I would say religion, to some, I don't want to be trite here. I think in some ways, you ask any pastor this question, they'll say something like this, and I don't totally disagree, but religion is all the stuff that we do. And spirituality is, okay, here, I'm thinking this out loud, through out loud. Religion is doing the things you got to do to get God to approve of you, and maybe to get other people to approve of you. Spirituality, if I had to put a definition on that, I would say spirituality is embracing who you are, right, as God created you to be, and living that out, and embracing the you that you are deep down inside, the true you, right? As opposed to, and maybe I would say this is the journey of spirituality. You can be spiritual and not totally get all this, but it's the journey of spirituality to peel back the layers that are not us, right? But that we present to the world, and find the true self that is deep inside of us, that God says, that's the you that I want you to live out in the world. That's the you that I love. I can't remember who said it. I read a book, and I think I may have read it during this time when I was going through all this, but it said, the author said, God doesn't love your false self because God doesn't know your false self, right? This false self being the self that you present, right? Your professional self, your religious self, your whatever self. But God's like, that's not the part of you that I love. I love the you that you are deep down inside, with all of the good and the bad and all the hurt and the broken and the joyful and the hopeful. That's the you that I love. And I think spirituality is this journey of getting in touch with our true selves and living out our true selves in the world.
Nice.
How does that sound?
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
I enjoy people because, spirituality it's a personal walk, and, religion is something that the world has put a name on and has categorized certain things to fall into it. So it's a different, you can read a book about religion, but, spirituality is something that you experience, and each person is experiencing themselves within them, within their heart, within their mind. And there is a journey, as you mentioned, to be taken. I don't know if there's a religion journey. I feel like it is what it is that's presented.
That's right.
This is this church, this is that church. They think of this, they believe that, facts and things that are put down. But spirituality is definitely it's a movement, and you learn along your way, and there's things that your eyes are open to that you've been experiencing your whole life and didn't see it one way, So really nice, really nice. Thank you for that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask, do you at your church is your doors open to anyone to come in, despite sexual orientation, color, anywhere that they come in? Do you all welcome everyone into your?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. And I've been at this church now for about a year, and it's kind of interesting. Because I've known this church actually for a lot longer. It's actually only a few miles from the church that I've been at, that voted me out. And I had guest preached at this church numerous times after I had been voted out of that church. And so anyway, so I'm familiar.
Okay.
Yeah,
do they know why do they know what's happened?
A lot of them do. Yeah. Okay. And I don't really hide it because it's just part of my story. This is who I am.
Okay.
And yeah.
That's good.
Oh yes, I was trying to remember what the question was. Do we embrace everyone? For sure, 100%. It's kind of interesting. During my first month or two that I was there was one lady who had moved away but was visiting for an extended period for a year or so, and she had been at this church in the years past for a long time, but she wanted to sort of test me, and she came from a very conservative position, and said, "What do you do if a gay couple comes to the church?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to tell them to leave." And I said, I just don't have it in me to tell people that you're in or you're out anymore. I used to, but
what changed?
That's not my job. It's like my heart opened. It's so right. It was this experience that sort of like just got me to this point where I'm like,
it humbled you.
It humbled me. Yeah, exactly. It humbled me. So it's kind of cool. I mean, I hesitate to talk because we're on a podcast. I don't want to like make, as a pastor, it's like, what should I talk about? What shouldn't I talk about?
You don't want to offend anybody, right?
Well, it's not that I don't want to offend. It's like, I don't want to violate people's trust, but we have a gay couple in our congregation, and one of them, he's gay and he's Muslim and he's falling in love with Jesus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he's so great. I really enjoy him. And he's very kind. And anyway, he and I have a great relationship, and
nice.
It's and it's a gift, And so yeah, this is where I live in a less black and white world than I used to. And God is at work in people's lives in all kinds of ways that sometimes and maybe often surprise me, right? I'm like, oh, wow, God is at work in your life. How cool is that? 10 years ago, I might have said, oh, I don't think God can be at work in someone's life like that. But now I'm like, I just want to see, oh, God's at work in your life too. That's so great. Hey, let's hang out,
Yes.
So, so 100%. Everyone, as far as I'm concerned, is welcome in our church. And what's really neat, even though, I think I was going to say, this church historically has been more conservative on these kinds of issues, but there has been no pushback. So I don't know what God did before I got there, but I feel like God did some stuff there to just make it a much more, at least in my perception, more open than perhaps it used to be, and welcoming, and embracing. And so I'm very grateful.
Oh, that's awesome.
For that.
Well, I mean, he's done a work in you and your life. And if you're up there leading the church, then, there's definitely change has already begun to step forth. And that's great. In today's times, we want to feel that, because, Jesus, he meshed with everybody. Mary Magdalene, like if we go deep into it. So there was never any pushback of who anyone was or what their work was that, he didn't, mingle with or he was around. Yeah. So it's nice that people are, we can hear that in today's times, because now there are a lot of different types of people and different orientations. And so it's nice to hear that people are welcome, because I've heard the negative things of people that they've stopped going to places or they've gone somewhere and they've been made to feel unwelcome in the house of the Lord. And you're like, really? Yeah. So that's nice to hear. That's nice to hear.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like to close with this final question. Is your glass half empty or half full?
Oh, my glass is 9/10 full. For sure. If I had to pick one of those two, it is half full, right? Yeah, it's a gift to think back on that experience, and also, so that all took place 2000. The investigation was 2015, got voted out the following spring, 2016. So it's been 7 years since that happened. I just drove through. So I took my daughter to a store that is actually happened to be near the old church, and we're there, and she's like, "Oh, I went to preschool there." I was like, "Yeah." And so we drove through the parking lot, and it was a gift to not feel traumatized like I often have in the past 7 years. I was just able to go through as an observer and be like, "Oh yeah, there's that room and there's that door," and so, okay, I was like, "Okay, Lord, thank you, thank you for what you did in me and what you are doing through me now. And I'm grateful that other people, and they've shared this with me, feel blessed because I don't come." Anyway, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I don't come with judgment, right? And so
this is the way it should be, right? This is the way it should be.
Yeah. Nice. And so, so my glass is half full, and I'm just grateful for what God has done, and I'm grateful for what He continues to do. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think my final thought would be just to believe and know that you are God's beloved, right? And you don't have to earn anyone's approval, right? You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You don't have to show them how good you are, how great you are. And I'm sorry when you are made to feel that way. I've been made to feel that way, right? But you don't have to prove yourself, right? You are God's child, right? Created in the image of God. You are God's beloved. And so my hope is just that you would believe that.
I love that. Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Can you tell everyone how they can reach you if they're interested to find more about you? Also about your book, Beyond Thingification.
Yeah. So you can go to my website, which is markuswatson.com. And that's Markus with a K, Markus, Watson.com. And I've got some stuff there. So a lot of my work focuses on helping pastors. And I'll just say real quick, my calling has also developed to, I just want to help pastors because I know other pastors go through hard things in their ministries. And so that's a lot of what you'll find on that website. Just kind of some resources. I've got a free course, and then I've got a kind of more in-depth course that I charge a little bit for. Just helping pastors navigate difficult times and difficult changes in their congregations. And so that's the website. And then my podcast, Spiritual Life and Leadership. And I started about 2 years ago, I got partnered up with Fuller's Church Leadership Institute, Fuller Seminaries. And so I get to, talk to all kinds of great people, and I really love doing that. And then my book, Beyond Thingification, Helping Your Church Engage in God's Mission. I want to help churches not just stress out about how many people are coming to church on Sunday, but how do we actually participate with God in the healing of the world? And in this book, I give a really specific way to wrestle with the questions and get to know your neighbors and think about, and pray about and dream about what it might God be calling us to do to love the people in our neighborhood. So Beyond Thingification. Yeah.
And we can find that on like Amazon Books.
It's on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only on Amazon. So go to Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And I had to listen to some of the podcasts. There was one that really touched me with Todd Bolsinger. There was about flourishing. There was a quote that was given. It was, flourishing requires us to embrace both authority and vulnerability, both capacity and frailty, even in at least this broken world, both life and death. was really something. I was like, wow, it was really, really an eye-opener for that.
Yeah.
And I love it. It was just a little jump in, little short little thing, you know. You can just listen on your way to a little walk, you know. So it was really informative. I really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, for sure. That's from a book called Strong and Weak.
Oh, okay. It's from a book.
And,
okay.
Yeah. So Todd and I were discussing this quote. And anyway, that's a great book as well by Andy Crouch, if you want to check that out.
Awesome. Look, we'll take it all week. Hey, this is an informative podcast. We will take it all.
Good.
Perfect. Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking some time out to be with us today. We really appreciate you. And this evening as well. For sure.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be able to tell my story, and I hope that it's helpful, inspiring. I don't know, life-giving for folks. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming and sharing your story, that someone can be blessed by what it is that you had to say, and just to sharing your vulnerability to share this story. So thank you. Thank you. And you have a great evening.
You too. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to all our listeners listening in to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform for everyone to share their life experiences. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Levens. Please subscribe, follow, and rate this podcast on Apple Music and Spotify for more learning experiences. Until next time, know you are blessed. See ya.